I can remember as a graduate student, as a New Deal Democrat, as an admirer of Galbraith, believing that in that era, the countervailing power was a very good description of how political democracy had fought capitalism to a draw. You had engaged citizens, you had the labor movement, you had government, and you more or less had an equilibrium so that the market could generate dynamism and the market could generate entrepreneurship, and the state, through political democracy and through mobilized constituencies, could prevent capitalism from going nuts. And various Marxian phrases, like the Reserve Army of the Unemployed or the Executive Committee of the Ruling Class, just seem stilted and silly. Now, I don't know about you, but if the handoff from Rubin to Paulson to Kuttner is not the Executive Committee of the Ruling Class, I don't know what the hell it is. And if what is currently going on with outsourcing and a race to the bottom in wages is not a Reserve Army of the Unemployed, I don't know what it is. So I don't think my politics have changed in 40 years. I think the world has become a little bit more Marxian. And that means that you need somebody who is at least as radical as Roosevelt if you're going to have the kind of transformation that we need. And if we don't get it, the stakes are just unbearably high. This could have been a moment, it could still possibly be a moment if the Obama that we've seen flashes of becomes the president who rises to the occasion for the next several years. But if he doesn't, a moment to recreate a more balanced form of market and society will be lost. The far right will inherit the mess. Instead of having a generation that was primed to believe in a very different public philosophy, that was primed to be recruited to the Democratic Party, instead will become a cynical generation, and maybe a generation captured by the right. And that's just the politics. The economics is even more distressing. I was visiting a friend of mine who'd been my roommate at the London School of Economics 1,000 years ago, who I hadn't seen in a long time, and he's got a youngest son who's had difficulty, and with the economy presumably having even more difficulty. So I said to him, how's Robbie doing? He said, well, actually, he's doing well. He's a barrister. I said, really? He said, well, maybe I'm not pronouncing that right. I think it's pronounced barista. And, so you have the prospect of a lost generation of young people, lost to the Democratic Party, lost to their own lives, lost to the promise of their dreams. And I have this in my own family. I mean, of my two kids, my stepdaughter, and their spouses, two of them have really been damaged by this economy in their career. So it isn't just working class people, it's people with college degrees who did everything right, who just who hit the wave wrong. And I think of the difference between my generation, when we had a tailwind, and their generation, when they have terrible headwinds, that they personalize, they make it their failure, their fault. And in order to change this, you need policies, and I guess this is the message of the book, you need policies that are so much more radical than what is currently on offer. And I think it's our job to make radical policies mainstream. It's Obama's job to make radical policies mainstream. I mean, if you think about other transformative presidents, I pointed this out in Obama's challenge. I pointed out again in different ways after another year and a half of reporting in A Presidency in Peril. They not only had a great deal of nerve, but they had social movements pushing on them and pulling on them and dancing with them and fighting them and agreeing with them and creating space to their left. My first Democratic convention was at Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1964. I went with the Young Democrats, but I ended up smuggling floor passes to the Mississippi Free Democrats, and I still have the button. I think it was probably an SDS button from that convention. It said, "Part of the way with LBJ." Great button, because it meant that LBJ's domestic program, we support it, but it's only going to get us part of the way. And we're with him on domestic stuff, but we're not with him on the war. And it's very difficult with a leader as compelling as Barack Obama to adopt a politics of part of the way with Barack Obama. And I think that's the dilemma that so many of us in the progressive movement find ourselves in. So yes, winning health care was better than losing it. It would have been a catastrophic defeat. On the other hand, there is so much collateral damage because of the way they designed this bill, so that the mandate, which followed from the logic of doing a deal with the insurance companies, very unpopular. The diversion of Medicare money, very unpopular. The taxation of people who have good insurance policies, even more unpopular. Gives ammunition to the right. So yeah, pulling victory out of the jaws of defeat, absolutely indispensable. It would have been a cataclysmic defeat, but I think in this case a win was just a little bit better than a draw. It made him look like a leader, made him feel like a leader. His speech to the Democratic caucus the night before the vote, he relaxed, he was leaderly, he was great, and the speech after the vote was even better. So if you think about what it's going to take to get job growth back on track, the fact that President Obama is giving aid and comfort to Pete Peterson is creating a trap for Obama's own need to spend much more money than he's currently spending. I mean, think about it. There are two routes to fiscal balance. I'm part of a group called Fiscal High Road that is a consortium of EPI, Larry Michel's here, and Demos and the Century Foundation. And it's very simple economics. You can get to fiscal balance via austerity, the Pete Peterson approach. And you will balance the budget at a lower level of economic output. Or you can get to fiscal balance the way we did after World War II, where you have an enormous deficit that recapitalizes industry, retrains workers, put people back to work, gets growth back on track, and then you balance the budget at a higher level of GDP. I mean, that would seem to be a no-brainer. But 90% of the conventional wisdom and about 99.9% of the money is on the other side. And next week, we're going to see a kind of Walpurgisnacht of deficit hawks, where on the 27th of April, Obama's own commission, 14 out of the 18 people on it are deficit hawks, including some appointed by the president himself. And then the next day, as frosting on the cake, Peterson is going to have his summit conference. And the problem is that, yeah, after we get a recovery, and after we get growth back, and after we get tax revenues back, let's get deficits down to something normal. But in the meantime, we need to be spending more money. We need to have the equivalent, the economic equivalent of World War II, but without the war, thank you. And the only way to get that is through presidential leadership, energized and prodded and pushed by a social movement. So in conclusion, and my hero, Professor Galbraith, always used to say, you have to say in conclusion to give the audience hope. Let me thank all of you for buying the book, but more importantly, let me thank all of you for all the work you do. Thanks so much.